Brent Rains for Alternate Perceptions Online Magazine. And my special guest this evening, which is September 13th, is Trey Hudson. The He's the director of the what's known as actually the Meadow Project, but also the director of Anomalies Studies and Observation Group, and also Oxford Paranormal Society back down in Alabama.
Yes.
And is the author of the Meadow Project, Explorations into the South Skinwalker Ranch, published in 2021, with a foreword by Angela Shear, who was a good friend here. She was with director of MUFON and boots on the ground type of personality. And certainly you and your team are boots on the ground as well, with a very anomalous zone there somewhere, undisclosed location, to protect ongoing investigations. Kind of like Marley Woods and some other places.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, so since we last spoke, are there any significant developments since then? I know.
Oh gosh, yeah, plenty. I mean, it's it's an ongoing site. We've done numerous investigations. Just many, many, many happenings, and I'm trying to remember what has transpired since we last spoke. We've I don't know if you're familiar with the wonderful Katie Page, who's with
I
Colorado
interviewed
MUFON.
her earlier this year. Sure did.
Yeah.
Very
So
interesting things that she's experienced.
yes, so Katie's actually been a guest researcher out at the Meadow several times.
Oh,
So
okay.
she's come down and investigated with us, and some of the unique things that we've had happen with her is there's two additional locations we started researching, and at the risk of sounding melodramatic, we call these two areas the Field of Dreams and the Field of Nightmares, just because we'd had to give them a name so we knew where we were going and what to refer to. But in the Field of Dreams, which is probably about a mile away from the meadow, we've had shadow figures, lights in the woods, typical, and I say typical, that sounds really odd, but in our world, very typical stuff. But in the area called the Field of Nightmares, we've also had the shadow figures running around, and it's evolved into people actually being touched, physically touched by some unseen force. One of our researchers uh, had what we call the infamous Bohonkus incident, where something goosed her while she was sitting in her field chair, but nothing was there. They grabbed her rear end, her Bohonkus. That's a medical term, Bohonkus. No, I'm kidding. It's not. But and then Katie Page's traveling companion actually had his the hood on his sweatshirt tugged on. So it's evolved since then. We're having hitchhikers, some hitchhiker effects, uh, which is really neat. We've got some interesting developments with the mysterious lady in black, the mysterious businesswoman of the forest. Uh, had some additional guest researchers in the form of a video film crew, and director came down and had some unique experiences with them. And I'm trying to find my field notes here. Can't remember what I did with them, but just really amazing things since we last talked. The site is extremely active. We were there as recently as May, and we'll be going back a week from tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a lot there to
Right.
certainly to talk about. And the Field of Nightmares. Now, you said the Field of Dreams, the Field of Nightmares, and the Field of Dreams is about a mile away from the
Right.
the meadow. But the Field of Nightmares, is that the meadow or is that
No,
another
no,
one?
that's another field. That's field number 3, which is only about maybe 200 yards from the Field of Dreams.
Oh, okay. I've wondered, and my friend Dr. Greg Little, who has written an encyclopedia of uh, Native American mounds and
Mhm.
earthworks all over the United States, and he's interested also in all of these high strange events too, as I am, as to perhaps what I know you've mentioned Native American lore in
Mhm.
the area. I wonder if there are uh, significant native sites at these locations too that might play into it.
I would think so. And the only reason I say that is because all throughout this area, archaeologists are continuously finding old Indian sites, old Native American sites, usually next to large creeks or bodies of water. What's interesting is the meadow is actually adjacent to a very, very large creek or small river. So, it stands to reason that there was some sort of habitation there, Native American habitation. I know for a fact that there was a habitation going back at least as far as the 19th century because there is a historical cemetery in the area. And we've also found building foundations, in this general region. So, it was an area very rich in wildlife, very rich in game, plenty of water. Uh, so, it stands to reason that there was a robust Native American habitation, as it has been in other areas within a few miles of this specific location.
Okay. Uh, Interesting. Well, I know that I was down there with my wife and daughter in Jacksonville,
Hmm.
and we were taken on a tour by a gentleman who works at the university of
Hmm.
different ancient stone walls that appears along with in the mountains nearby of that
Hmm.
area. Like he calls them prayer circles, circular areas of
Right.
stones. There's apparently a great deal of there's even supposed to be in one area. I never did see this, but I think it's 170 something foot long
Snake,
stone
snake
snake.
effigy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
snake effigy. Yeah, actually, the university is Jacksonville State University, and both of my daughters are alumni of Jacksonville State, so very familiar with it.
Right. All right. Well, gee, where to begin?
Oh
How
yeah,
about, how about the you say it says about a woman in black?
yes. I don't know if you remember, you and I had discussed, back a while, and it's also in my book about the mysterious businesswoman that appeared at our campsite. We had just had that amazing encounter with the cube or the box, which is interesting because cubes and boxes are becoming more and more prevalent, in the high strengthness community. It seems to be you're hearing about them a whole lot. So, this cube or box appeared on our thermal. We were able to vector a team into it just as it was dissipating, and our team disappeared off our thermals. Since then, we've been able to recreate uh, a facsimile of that action in that same area. And during our recreations, we were not able to completely mask our team's thermal signature. So something non-physical was between us and them that masked their thermal signature. So anyway, we had this going on, and that was also the same night that we had the thermal signatures of entities that appeared to be watching us or observing us, as we were doing our stuff that didn't correspond with the known location of any team members. So when we got back to camp, there was this woman. It was about 10:30 at night, waiting for us at camp, and she was dressed in business attire. And 10:30 at night in February in a remote location in the mountains, wearing business attire. Nothing fit. Everything was strange and wrong about it. And she kept wanting us to stop what we were doing and follow her to a site where she claimed that there were monkey bears. Now, I'm assuming that that means some sort of Bigfoot-like or Sasquatch-like creature, half between a monkey and a bear. And so this woman was giving off a very strange vibe, just very unsettling, uncanny, and was really trying to, in our opinion, from our perspective, to thwart our actions of doing a debrief of all our team members who just experienced this amazing portal. And so she kept, just pestering us to follow her down this deserted road to where the monkey bears were. Now, I'm not going to follow some strange woman down a deserted road in the middle of the night in an extremely remote area because all kinds of nefarious things could happen. Best case scenario, you get robbed and beaten up. Worst case scenario, you get probed. So, needless to say, we weren't following her down this road. And during her insistence, she asked me which university I attended. And I said, well, I attended the University of West Georgia. She goes, oh, I did too. And she asked me, well, what is your major in? And I said, well, I have a degree in transpersonal and humanistic psychology. And she said, oh, I do too. I'm like, okay, yeah, okay. She's messing with me now. I'm going to trick her. I said, well, that's great. Who were some of your favorite professors there? She started naming off people that I actually knew, the people I had studied under. So, there's starting to be a really weird synchronicity here. And, she continued to be very, just, just had a very weird vibe about her. And to make matters worse, she decided to squat down and urinate in front of us. So, which is not the way polite people act around folks you just met. I mean, you don't even really do that in front of people that are very good friends. So we were finally able to kind of, keep pushing her off, and she got bored or tired or frustrated and got in her vehicle and left. About a year later, I got an email, let me back up, a message from a psychotherapist in Istanbul, Turkey, who also, now this is where it starts to get kind of weird, was also a graduate of the University of West Georgia Psychology Department. So he's asking me if I'd ever heard of something called the Carrollton Vortex there in Carrollton, Georgia, which I hadn't. And he was just, kind of seeing if the Meadow and the Carrollton Vortex coincided, which they don't. But anyway, during the course, he said, "Hey, I read your book." He goes, "Can you give me the name of, did the woman that appeared at your campsite give you her name?" And I said, "Yes, she did. Her name is," and I'm going to say, Jane Smith is just the name I'm going to use. That's a fictitious name. And he goes, "Wow." He goes, "I think I might know her." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, if it's the same person I'm thinking of, she was always very attuned to things. She could sense things." And so I started thinking, wow, this woman gave us her name. This seems to correspond with a real person. We had done a little uh, checking and digging throughout the internet and found a woman that looked like the woman that was in our campsite, had a real online presence, was a real person. So I started thinking, I wonder if, these strange visitors that come to people, much like the right after the Point Pleasant Silver Bridge collapse, and started to dissuade people from telling their story, if these weren't actual human beings influenced by an outside force. And so I discussed it with this psychotherapist, and he said, that's a possibility. She was always kind of that person, always really in tune to what's going on. And I said, hey, if she would ever like to talk to me, I would love to speak to her. I don't want to out her. I don't want to give her name. I don't want to embarrass anybody. I'm just really curious about this whole phenomenon. So probably about 4 months ago, a message pops up in my inbox. And lo and behold, it's Miss Smith. And she says, hey, I just heard one of your podcasts, and I wanted to reach out and tell you that I am not a lady in black. I am not a woman in black. And I said, hey, your presence and your demeanor seemed very odd, and that seems to fit in with the definition of men/women in black. And she goes, no, I was had a hard day at work, and I was driving around during the day, and I saw a Bigfoot sticker or something on one of your vehicles as I was driving to this extremely remote forest. My words, not hers. And I decided I was going to come back later and tell you about the monkey bears that I and my sister had encountered when we were youngsters. Well, she decided to come back at 10:30 at night. So she drives up into a campsite with nobody she knows in the middle of the night. Now, if you paid attention, a majority of us were armed. So here's this woman with herself and a 14-ish a year old male that she said was her son driving up into this strange campsite full of armed people in the middle of the night.
Hmm.
So she proceeds to tell us about these monkey bears. And then I asked her, I said, well, what about the urination thing? And she said, hey, I'd been drinking quite a few long necks on the ride over there. And when you got to go, you got to go. And she says, "Trust me, I am not under the influence of anything. Nothing was controlling me. I just wanted to talk to you about my experience as a child. And I had no idea that I was interfering with y'all's work, that I was, injecting myself into what y'all were doing. And that was not my intention. And I understand why you did not want to interact with me, so I left." Now, that's her story. That's what she told me.
Mhm.
Now, prima facie, that seems reasonable. Okay. But these weird synchronicities, keep popping up. So, it's one of those things. I don't, when I lectured as recently as last week. I don't include that part in my lecture anymore because I just don't know. But, there was a guy that I think some dude wrote a book about, some old guy.
Yeah, yeah. I think I know.
I mean, this old guy, not you, old guy. This old guy. Uh, you know, what would John say about this? What would his feelings on this? I think one thing he would tell me is he'd say, "Trey, don't take the experience at face value because there might be something else there." So you're the John Keel expert. What do you think he would say about this? Now, I've laid out, going from a mysterious woman to getting secondhand knowledge from about her from a mutual acquaintance, for her actually contacting me and proclaiming that she is not a woman in black. She's not controlled by any unseen force. She was just somebody wanting to talk about her childhood experiences. So, what do you think John's take on that would be?
I think he'd be interested. He would make some notes on it. He would probably not say much, but he would, he kept a lot of things to himself. But down the road, it might appear in one of his articles.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing. It's one of these weird experiences. Take from it what you will. So that's a pretty major development. From the mysterious, the whole had a whole chapter called the mysterious businesswoman of the forest, or businesswoman of the forest. And so, and most of that chapter was literally a transcript from our debrief of the goings on that night. So, after after the psychotherapist from Istanbul contacted me, I went back and uh, questioned my team. I said, "Everybody, write out your reminiscence of that evening and send me an affidavit." And to a person, they all commented about just how strange that experience was. So it was, either it truly was an unusual experience and an unusual happening that had an offness to it that we were, subconsciously picking up, or we were already attuned to high strangeness, and that this fell right into our, I'm not going to say normalcy bias because that's hardly normal, but our preconceived bias for that evening, of high strangeness. So, that's one of those things to chalk up to, something very mysterious and weird.
And also, I remember you saying that with her background, knowing the same people you did and going to the same college and everything, there wouldn't be anybody within like 50 miles or so that fit that.
I
you know?
Yeah, on the front of my truck, I have a tag that says, alumni, University of West Georgia. And I've never had anybody come up to me and say, "Oh, hey, I went there too." It just is, it's not very common. If you go across the border and you kind of know, the Jacksonville-ish area, so you just go across the border into Georgia. Yeah, I'm going to find West Georgia graduates here, but most of the people, uh, that I come in contact with are not West Georgia graduates, and the area where the Meadow is, which is several hours away, is even further removed. So, what are the odds? And when you start stacking them up like that, the synchronicities, it's odd. It's just one of those things I'm going to have to, scratch my head about and just
Well,
wonder.
what about those monkey bears? Did you ever find out any details on what
Yeah,
it's supposed to be
yeah,
about?
yeah. What she said is there was an old in the forest in this wildlife preserve that there was an old cabin or barn or some sort of structure, and these things lived in this abandoned ramshackle building. And she said they looked like basically a cross between a monkey and a bear, and were maybe a meter big, a meter tall. So
Hmm.
they sound kind of like lemurs, which actually absolutely are not remotely indigenous to this area.
Right.
So who knows?
Yeah. And that would have been over in Carrollville, what is Georgia, or was that
That's Carrollton is in Georgia. Yes.
okay? Okay, and then wow, yeah, I saw recently on Facebook a thread there where Joshua Cutchin was even talking about coming to the Meadow, and
Yeah.
his I know he's been writing a lot and exploring a lot of things with his Ecology of Souls,
Hmm.
and of course with Tim Renner, the footprints. See, where do the footprints end? Volume one
Yeah.
and volume two.
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
great material.
Right. Absolutely. Where the footprints end. Yep.
Yeah,
Excellent book. And
excellent.
I'm
Yeah.
just going to give him. I'm going to give him a shout out. If you haven't read his fiction book, "Them Old Ways Never Die," highly recommended. Very good book.
All right. Yeah, I've seen it mentioned recently on Facebook, but I haven't checked that out yet. I met him and Tim in the fall of 2019 at
Hmm.
Strange Reality Conference in Nashville, and there was
Yep.
when they described the things that are now in their books, it was like, okay, I gotta I gotta follow up on this. There was some very interesting stories, the women in white and such.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
anyway,
So Josh was able to make it. He was with us in May. Which was just an amazing experience. Several things. We had a several guest researchers with us. We had, of course, Josh was there, and then we had a husband and wife team that had been wanting to do some work with us. And where that got a little odd is we were uh, had gone out Friday, and I don't know if you remember me describing the meadow itself. It's basically a large, probably about 7 acre field with a creek, a small creek or river, or small river, large creek to the south, and a ridge line to the north. And what we usually do, which has worked very well for us, is we put several teams out in the meadow with night vision and thermal, and then we'll have a team run across the ridge, go from east to west and then back to east, and then work their way down into the meadow.
mm-hmm.
And one of my top researchers and these husband and wife were on the team, the ridge running team. Well, they moved to the along the top of the ridge to the extreme east end of it and stopped. And the wife started getting a sense of unease, and she says, I feel like something is watching us. Something is lurking around. She goes, I get this feeling almost like Gollum, from Lord of the Rings, lurking around and slinking around. I don't feel comfortable. I'm very uneasy.
Mm-hmm.
And so Daryl, one of my lead investigators, he said, "Hey, if you're not comfortable, we don't want you to be here. That's not cool. So we'll go back to base camp, or we can go back to the meadow and link up with another team. Would you like that?" She says, "Yes. I'm not comfortable here." So they started working their way back to the west end of the meadow. And as they're working their way across, I'm on one of the teams in the meadow, and I don't know if you know Greg Ogles, who is a producer director of a documentary called "The Legend of the Downy Booger." He was one of a guest researcher that weekend too, and
Uh-huh.
he saw a orb pacing them just below them, probably about 50 yards below them, where they couldn't see it, down the ridge, pacing them as they moved along. So doing like this. Kind of like what she had an impression of, something watching them, something following them.
Now, was this visual? I mean, was it
The,
with
it was
thermal?
it was visual.
Visual. Okay.
It was visual. So uh, this orb tracks them for a distance and then disappears. So we had disembodied voices, lights in the distance, the usual stuff. And we all went back to base camp, and she and her husband went to sleep in their tent. Well, she remembers dreaming a very vivid dream, and in this dream, a woman and a young male follow us back from base camp. Everybody goes to bed, and this woman and young male come to their tent and stare at the top of their tent. And as they're staring at the tent, the roof dissolves, becomes clear, becomes translucent. And she's looking up at this in her dream. She's looking up at this female and this young male. And they lift her and her husband up out of their tent into a white room with a whiteboard. And there are symbols on this whiteboard. One is a spiral. And I wish I had my notes here handy. I would show you exactly what it looked like. But one is a spiral. The next one is a squared off rectangular type squared off spiral, like this. And the next one is once again a rectangular spiral, and inside of it there's a eye, like the all-seeing eye, with tongues of flame coming off the eyes like eyelashes. And so she told this to her husband, and she goes, "I don't think this means anything, but I have this dream." And her husband says, "No, you need to tell Trey about this. I think this might be significant." So she and her husband come to me the next morning and says, "Hey, Trey, look at this drawing I made of this dream. Let me tell you about this dream and show you these symbols." And she did, and showed me the drawings. And I said, "Christy, do you understand the significance of the spiral in Native American iconology as it pertains to portals or gateways?" And she says, "No, I'm not familiar with that." So she had no idea that the spiral icon, in Native American symbolism, represented gateways, portals, or doors to another dimension or another place. She also wasn't familiar with the research that we had done, where our portal was box-like in shape. Yet she drew a rectangular spiral that was shaped like a box. And then, of course, the third one was like a box-shaped spiral with an eye in it. So this dream just came out of nowhere. If you remember back when we discussed it before, one of my team members, after we had done a CE5 protocol in the Meadow, he had the word Nox Magbe come to him in his dream, Noxmagbe, phonetically spelled. And special operations Air Force guy, really, really smart engineer. And I researched those words, and Nox turned out to be the Roman goddess of the night, which was a variation of the Greek goddess Nyx, Nyx. Nox was they stole the Greek gods and goddesses. So Nox is the Roman goddess of the night, and Magbe you can find in the Old English poem Beowulf as Magma, which is Old English for children or kindred. So you put them together. Let me back up. The Romans, occupied Britain until about 400 Common Era. So it's reasonable that the speaker of Old English would also have some idea of Roman god and goddesses. So the words are contemporaneous. So Nox Magbe or Nox Magba means children of the night goddess. Now, what are small like children with big heads that come and visit people at night? Well, the Greys. But if you go and you talk to Josh Cutchin, he would say the Fae, goblins, fairies, things like that. It's all the same symbolism. So that was another instance where we had a download from dreams while in the Meadow. So fast forward to Saturday night. So we're out there Saturday night, and it's important to realize that during the day on Saturday afternoon, we were talking about the local fauna in that area. We were discussing, this area is home to bears and mountain lions and feral hogs and all kinds of large creatures. And so this was kind of in the back of some of our researchers' minds, these kind of large creatures. So we went back out to the Meadow, and we had about 12 people in the Meadow. So there were 6 teams of 2 people surrounding the entire field. Very, very significant and obvious human presence in the Meadow. One of my researchers said he brought his thermal up, and he sees a shape moving through the Meadow. And he said it was about the size of a large feral hog. So thinking 300-400 pounds, something big.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing he thinks of is, oh, we were just talking about feral hogs and bears. It must be a hog or a bear. So he takes his thermal and he drops it. He does not hit record because he has jumped right into his normalcy box and assumed that this was a bear or a hog. And when we got back and we're debriefing, I said, look, what animal would move through a open field with no cover, surrounded by human beings, which some of them were upwind of it. So they had to have the scent of us. No animal, even a large cat or bear, would not do that. It would avoid humans. And he said, holy cow, you are right. And I said, and do you remember what Christy said about having a feeling of something low, slinking along the ground and trying to move up on us? That was precognition. And he said, holy cow, and I didn't record it. I'm like, well, it happens. We all fall into our own, assumptions. And that was just one of the examples of some of the things that happened to us as recently as last May.
Wow. That's pretty wild stuff. Are you, maybe a little early for me to ask, but are you working on a new book?
Yes. And I'm going to ask for a favor here, because you mentioned somewhere that I have not been able to crack the code on yet. Marley Woods. I put several queries out to people in the know, and I'm not going to name their names, but they're names you would recognize. On where would I go for the definitive source of information on Marley Woods? And as of yet, I have not had any replies. So I'll tell you about the second book, because the first half of the book is going to be a part one. Is called Congruences, which is a study of different high strangeness areas in the continental United States. 2 chapters are already done. One is on Katie Page's amazing facility out in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
The other chapter is on the Bradford Ranch, which I've got some amazing things done through some analysis of some of Linda Bradshaw's photographs, which I think people will find intriguing and maybe startling. And the chapter that I'm trying to crack open now is the Marley Woods chapter, but I just can't get any information. So if you have any information, on Marley Woods, just send me a link. I would love to have it so I can flesh out that chapter.
I did an interview with Robert Ferrario, who was with Ted Phillips. Now he's the director of the. Right. He's on Facebook.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. And I found some couple of articles, and I haven't asked him yet, but they were written about a place in Missouri with sightings, and I showed a picture of a gate that was pushed open, busted open or something. And I was thinking, I bet you this is Marley Woods right there. So I was going to follow up on that. But yeah, that's another location that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And the story about the horse, that was like it was microwaved in the barn. I mean, that was horrible. But I remember Ted Phillips. He was such a nuts and bolts investigator who, investigated all these hundreds of landing sites and such.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that's what he concentrated on. And then the Marley Woods thing came along, and he had all those experiences, seeing lights and things himself, and high strangeness came along. And he told at a conference he was the used to be the nuts and bolts guy. Now he says he's just nuts. That's the nuts guy.
That's kind of what I tell people now. Is he started off as a paranormal researcher, a ghost guy, and now I'm just kind of a weird crapologist. If it's weird, I don't care what genre of high strangeness it is. I go and check it out.
Yeah. Well, of course, Keel started in 1966. Looking at the nuts and bolts ET thing, and then he traveled around to about 20 different states, beginning in 67, and finding the kind of cases he was dealing with, he realized it was more complex. And of course, I think there was an interview with Tim Beckley, and he was telling about his childhood and experiencing, and as a young man, a poltergeist activity, seeing a big circular sphere that rose up from a hilltop with his mother and his stepfather, and neighbors who said a gorilla was running through the area.
Wow.
And so, when he had those experiences, what he investigated in Point Pleasant and other locations, and then thinking back to his childhood, I think that probably helped him to put it together, Plus, I think Keel had some psychic sensitivity, and that I think it all kind of helped. But anyway, uh, yeah, this so really the Meadow Project's been going on since about, I guess, about 2015. That you
Yeah, 2015 we started kind of being aware of the area. 2016, 2017 is when we really started really putting all of our tools to bear on it. So we've been, our philosophy is a little bit different than I think some groups. And I'm very proud of the work we've done. So I'm going to toot our horn a little bit. But we try to keep one foot in the empirical and 1 foot in the experiential. We try to gather data, and we try to also, focus on the human experience. So we go out there with Geiger counters and electronic field detectors and thermals and cameras and night vision and all that stuff. But we also really put a lot of focus on the experience that people are having. So we bring some tools into the mix, like from various fields, like the Estes protocol. Where you have a ghost box, a blindfolded individual with sound canceling earplugs. They can't hear what's going on, and they're told if they hear an intelligible word come out of the ghost box, they're to repeat it, regardless of how silly it sounds. So if they hear rutabaga, they just say rutabaga, and they don't know what questions are being asked of them. So we've had several really, really good SD sessions, and that's one of the things that Josh Hutchins said during our last thing is the thing that struck him the most, intrigued him with our SD session, because it appears as though we have two-way conversations, and SD session, a SD session is featured prominently in his fiction book, Them Old Ways Never Die. So, we try to do two things. I had a chance to talk to Eric Bard, who's the chief researcher out at Skinwalker Ranch, let's see, 4 days ago, 5 days ago. And he's like, yeah, I think y'all are on the right track. Continue, especially on the science-based part of it, your track, because he and I discussed the radiation spikes that we are seeing that correspond with incidents of high strangeness. So, I think we're on the right track, and we're going to continue to research this site and continue, as you alluded to earlier, putting our boots on the ground as long as we're able to.
All right. Did Angela Shear ever get to come to the Meadow? And
yeah, she did not. It was one of those funny things. She said, "Well, do you think Dale can get the Super Chief camper bus down there?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not." And she goes, "Well, I'm going to have to figure out the logistics of going out there." So we were never able to get her out there. She and I have talked a lot about the Meadow Project and some of the projects that she was working on. So I was devastated. When she passed away and when she told me of her diagnosis. One of the recurrent researchers we have come out with us is a very close associate of Angelia, which was Matt Dell. He comes out with us just about every time. So,
yeah.
So he definitely brings the spirit of Angelia with us.
Yeah, she it came on real sudden, and the I had done a couple of interviews with her and had met her and spoke to her group up there in Nashville at a library, and I know she was talking about writing a second book, and said she was really going to get really into the nitty gritty on it, because unfortunately, that never was able to happen.
Yeah.
So, but anyway,
something that I just remembered that you might find interesting is something that we have added to our research repertoire is a God helmet. And I don't know if you're familiar with the corn helmet.
Oh yeah, I interviewed Tom Murphy, who built them. Yeah.
So actually, I got with him and bought one of his helmets, which are the only ones that were actually blessed. The program and helmet were the only ones actually blessed by Dr. Persinger. So I've been using his technology or his helmet that he designed in conjunction with our research. So we had two people last May go through Persinger sessions, and then we had these amazing experiences last May. Now, the people that had the experiences were not the ones that used the God helmet, which I find intriguing. I'm just wondering if having research members in the field that had experienced this technology, if it doesn't prime the pump, to sort of speak, to allow the experiences and the phenomena to manifest even to those people who had not used that technology.
All right. Yeah, I need to go ahead. I've made a note here to send you a copy of my interview.
Oh, sure.
It was quite a few years ago, but it's still relevant, you know. Yeah, that's interesting. I've wanted to toy one of those things myself, you know, monkey around with it, but never had the opportunity. But anyway.
Yeah.
Have you ever had any cylindrical objects occur around the meadow, or
as far as UAPs, no, not that I have not personally seen any, nor have I had any of my team reported. We have had UAP sightings. That was something else that happened in May. Is we were in an area probably about 5 miles from the meadow that has been clear cut, that gives you an almost horizon to horizon field of view. And during the evening, we had been watching, numerous, satellites crossed by, legions of aircraft, just a lot of stuff that was identifiable. And much to our surprise, we saw an object that was brighter than the moon, brilliantly lit, very bright, white, about the size of an aspirin held out at arm's length, traverse horizon in about 6 seconds. So it was really moving, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Much faster than any satellite, much larger and brighter than any satellite. Did not have the anti-collision nor navigation lights of any aircraft. So, truly a UAP. So we did have that as recently as May. We've had some other UAP sightings of lights that are blinking together, like blink of two sets, dropping slowly below the horizon. And we observed those with binoculars and recorded those. And the light configuration and coloration did not match any known aircraft, did not match the aircraft we've been seeing the whole night. So we have had UAP sightings there. Had one as recently as, of course, in May, then had one in October, which was a disc that appeared that looked like the sun diffused through a very cloudy, overcast day, a very bright, hazy disc, except it rose, at 105 degrees magnetic, which is almost due west, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So sun should be setting, not rising, obviously. It wouldn't be setting in the east. So this luminous disc popped up, was still moved laterally and then winked out, which is interesting because if you go back to 2017, that's almost the exact same UAP sighting that one of my team members had at night, with a luminous disc popping up, moving sideways, and then winking out. So a lot of UAP happening going on there, but not anything as solid as a cylinder. Now, but you did mention cylinder, and I will tell you something that's a segue. Last May, and you'll appreciate this, is the trickster element is very much alive and well.
Oh yeah.
I was preparing my breakfast Saturday morning, and I keep a can of nonstick cooking spray so I can do my hash browns and my eggs in 2 pots pans on my camp stove. So I was looking for this can of cook spray. There's a particular place I keep in my kitchen box all the time. Couldn't find it, tore the whole box up, couldn't locate it. And I'm like, well, okay, hopefully the nonstick attributes of the pan will be sufficient. And so I went ahead and cooked my breakfast, didn't think anything of it, other than I was a big knucklehead for leaving my cooking spray back at home. Woke up Sunday morning, had my breakfast, was starting to pack, opened up my cook box, and there was a can of cooking spray laying right on top where it should have been the whole time.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's the trickster element is alive and well. As some other people in my team have had orbs and things, playing tricks on them at home. So we've got the trickster element and the hitchhiker effect. So those two things are very much in play now, and the phenomena is evolving. It started off as one thing, and now it's slowly evolving into something else, different types of phenomena. So in October, we had two team members go out, and we're using dowsing rods, two L-shaped standard dowsing rods, and they were asking a series of questions. No, this is no. This is yes. And they were getting responses on no or yes. And one of the questions we asked was, we have experienced spikes of radiation in this area before. If you are here, can you raise the reading on the Geiger counter to 0.13 microsievert per hour? The baseline is about 0.06. And would you believe that the Geiger counter went up to 0.13 microsieverts per hour and stopped? Exactly what we asked it to do. So we have a photograph of the Geiger counter, at 0.13 microsieverts per hour.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, that's some high strange trickster stuff. And on the hitchhiker, or what Keel called reflective factor, the people that left afterwards being at the Meadow, they went home and had some follow-up experiences that
two really good ones come to mind. One is my personal experience, and I had a small LED flashlight that I had placed on my desk, which is just right over here to my left. Placed it on the desk, was doing some work, turned around, and the flashlight is gone. It was just one of those things that, hey, that's a piece of gear that I really like. Dang it, I lost it. So I looked on the floor and went around and couldn't find it. Went upstairs and slept overnight. All the doors in this building were locked. Came back down the next morning, and the flashlight was sitting right there on my desk where it was before it disappeared. So very much a trickster element. Things being moved, not malicious or malevolent, just playful. Another team member had spent a time at the Meadow, had gone home, and was filming her toddler son playing on their elliptical machine, just being a little kid playing around, acting goofy. And as she's filming it on her phone, she sees an orb circling this kid. And she looks with the naked eye, and she can't see with the naked eye, looks back at the phone and sees it on the phone. And during the video, which I've seen, the little boy points up at the orb and goes, ball, ball. So with his youthful eyes, he was able to see this manifestation, yet she as an adult was not, and could only discern it through her phone. So a trickster hitchhiker following her home. We've had one of our team members, since experiences at the Meadow, started having dreams of orbs coming into her bedroom, and then eventually creatures standing over her and watching her while she sleeps. Now, where have we heard of this before? This is also the same person that was driving back home, and she has a long drive back to home from the Meadow, that her car lost all power outside of Commerce, Georgia. Completely died, no power. Newer car. In 45 minutes, the power came back.
Well, what was the description of the beings you saw around the bed? And
if I recall, dark figures, standing around her. One thing, and I'm going to go ahead and let this out. That was going to kind of be my surprise. Is the last chapter or last part of my book, new book, part 3, is we hope to have some regressive hypnosis done with some of the team members, and also have a remote viewer independently look into some of these happenings and situations.
Okay, yeah. There's a lot of different angles to try to cover with these things.
Right.
That's for sure. Wow. With that orb thing, I mean, I know a lot of your cameras will be able to see into like the infrared.
Right.
But what did it look like to her? I mean, sometimes there's particles, you know.
Right. Dust particles. Right. And, you know, that would be one of the things that would be very easy to count, you know, chalk it off as the infrared ranging light on a camera. You know, as it sends infrared out to determine distance so it can focus, was reflecting off a piece of a dust mote or something. But what was amazing about that is her son actually pointing up in the air and saying "ball," as though he could, you know, perceive this sphere of energy floating around.
Wow. So it appeared to her, I guess, in the video, like or through the lens as as like more of an energy thing, or I just want
Yeah, kind of a semi-translucent, you know, what you would, you know, call an orb.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, at least you didn't have the dogmen or whatever like they had in the Strangers of the Pentagon.
No dogmen yet.
But maybe maybe the dynamics of it kind of alter. It's been building up, and you've had different people from different backgrounds coming in. Maybe that adds some alterations to some of the evolving phenomena too. It's intriguing. It's intriguing. And all right, I told you about an hour, and I see we're 51 minutes 45 seconds. How about any conferences? I think that shirt you got on is one you just attended.
I just happened to wear this shirt today. I was at the in April. I was at the Ozark Mountain UFO conference. Fantastic conference. Really a super good one. I was invited to be a speaker at the Phenomenon this past week. Excellent conference. You know, met a lot of really good people. A lot of people with very similar experiences. And you know, so the world of high strangeness is hopping and popping. You know, it's going on out there. And so that was a wonderful conference. I'm speaking at a very small gathering next month in Molina, Georgia, which is, I think, down near Albany or Columbus. Let me back up. Near Columbus at the Molina Bigfoot Festival. So I'll be there speaking at the library during their festival. And, you know, I might even be able to wrestle a free cord dog out of it. Who knows? But,
all right.
So yeah, I'm you know, so now that I'm retired, my speaking engagements are starting to pick up. So usually I'll mention those you know, on my Facebook page, Trey Hudson author. You know, people want to keep up with that to see where I'll be speaking. So, you know, a lot of things going on. We're, you know, trying to bring some new technology, you know, into the mix, you know, with the God helmet and some other things. We've upgraded our thermals from consumer grade FLIR company, FLIR Incorporated Scout type thermals up. And we're now using ATN OTS thermals, which are each thermal several $1,000s. So we've got 2 of those units in the field now. So we're, you know, we're really trying to bring technology to bear while not forsaking the humanistic and experiential nature of these things. So we're still very dialed in with that.
Yeah. The field is evolving. There's more, seems to be increased interest in the high strange. I think it was Hynek that gave it the title there. You know, in the old days, back in the 60s, Keel and Jacques Vallée had a hard time to, you know, bring people around from what they'd been conditioned to think about.
Right.
You know, the nuts and bolts of this to delving into these areas. And I remember I used to just, in the early days, you know, like I got interested back in January 1967, I started collecting information. And I was strictly nuts and bolts ET after reading Frank Underwood's Flying Saucer Serious Business, which books like that Keel called cult literature, because they kind of condition people just to accept one version of it. But yeah, it's opening up Pandora's box as a whole. Like you said a while ago, you're open to just about everything that anyone wants to describe, because you don't know this what the full dimension of this thing is, the full spectrum.
Well, Keel called them ultra terrestrials, and I've kind of taken that and kind of modified that. I call them paradimensional, that they're entities, intelligences, whatever outside of our dimension, and they're just as real as the table I'm sitting behind right now. And I think that the more people we get out in the field, the more people we have looking at things like you alluded to with an open, holistic mind. I think this is a fantastic time to be in the field.
Yeah, I know Keel wrote in his Strange Creatures from Time and Space, published in 1970, same year as Operation Trojan Horse came out, and he wrote that ghost aliens, what's the difference? And that was a pretty wild statement for ufology at that time. And I know he also said ufology should be a branch of parapsychology.
I agree.
He evolved that much in a short period of time. Anyway, are there let's see, any future podcasts that you're going to be doing that maybe you want to tell?
Oh, let me think. I'd have to go back and look on my calendar. I know I have, as you know, I'm recovering from some surgery, so I'm starting to get back into the groove of things. There are some that most likely will be coming up, but I don't have any names and dates yet. So, like I said, the good thing to do is just watch my Facebook feed, and usually I'll put those out as they come up.
Okay, so Trey Hudson on Facebook. Are there any other sites you want people to examine?
No, yeah, I'm pretty illiterate when it comes to web pages and all. I have people just beating me about the head and neck to build a web page. I haven't done it yet. So the best thing right now is, being a Luddite, is go to Trey Hudson author on Facebook. That's pretty much all I have right now.
Okay. All right then, Trey. Well, thank you very much for taking this time to talk to me, and I'll be sending you an email with whatever I can find on the that place out in Missouri.
Yes, thank you, Brent. I would appreciate it.
And thank you. And I enjoy talking with you and sharing some correspondence as always. So
thank
anyway,
you. Always a pleasure.
Same here. Good luck with your ongoing work. It's incredible.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.